The business case for fixed wireless access traditionally points to a targeted investment and rapid payback scenario. But how true is this now, given the huge increase in household data consumption in recent years? And how can 5G technologies be successfully utilised for fixed wireless access deployments? Well, joining me now to explain the role of 5G FWA is Joe Barrett, President of the Global Mobile Suppliers Association, the GSA. Hello Joe, it's good to see you again. It's been far too long. Now, when the GSA started, which must be about, 25 years ago now or so, it focused a lot on devices and device manufacturers. How have you expanded the remit, and why also did you launch the FWA Forum?
Thank you, Guy. Yes, it has been a long time since we've met up for various reasons, of course. So GSA has really changed over the past 25 years, as you said, from devices as a focus and some technology. And we've now expanded the research that we do to promote the 3GPP technology roadmap to track all the different technologies, devices as well, of course, 4G, 5G, but also what operators are doing, what spectrum is being assigned. We have a spectrum group that is probably the largest in the industry, with over 185 participants from our members split into regions and focus groups. And then also now looking at private mobile networks and fixed wireless access. Started a couple of years ago because our members saw an opportunity to really drive better information sharing within that segment. So that's what's really started that.
Now, fixed wireless access has long been identified as a major use case for 5G, but what is the reality today? Is there still a market demand for 5G delivered FWA?
We believe so. We've been tracking fixed wireless access deployments now and devices for a number of years. We've got 50 members and partners in the Fixed Wireless Access Forum. And so that shows the level of interest and involvement from not just the large suppliers like Ericsson or Samsung or Huawei and others, but also a lot of the smaller companies as well. Many of them in Asia, where they see big opportunities to deploy equipment. And so we've been providing that information. I think there are the latest report shows the number of fixed wireless access networks that have been deployed, and also what the forecasts are from those participants in the forum. The latest survey shows the growth from last year to this year of devices, and also even increased growth going into 2023.
Well, it's good to hear that there's a growth in devices that will support this model. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the business case for FWA usually points to like a targeted geographical deployment, but with data usage going up and household usage skyrocketing over the past couple of years, thanks in a large part to 4K video streaming, it's many times higher than the data usage of a mobile device. So how does this impact the operator business case for FWA?
Clearly, one of the main areas has been rural coverage, where you can't get fibre or good broadband. Where I am, there's multiple fixed wireless access points, and rural areas where people need that level of broadband. And yes, we've seen an increase in demand and say throughput from residential premises now because of more people working from home, etc. And so I think what's important is the release now of spectrum. So if you look at 5G, the C-band spectrum, the 3.2, 3.4 to 3.8 gigahertz, that has become quite important 5G spectrum. And that's also being used for fixed wireless access. So I think spectrum is one of the key areas of rolling out this type of service. And we're seeing more and more operators deploying fixed wireless access into not just rural, but areas where you need, that flexibility to ensure you've got good throughput and bandwidth from residential and small offices.
Sure. And Joe, if data, especially household data usage, continues to increase and fixed wireless access has this role as a wireless fibre alternative, you mentioned the need for more spectrum, but are there any other technology advances and innovation that's required from 5G as we evolve the 5G standards to meet this demand, or is the technology pretty much there?
I think a lot of the technology is already there. We're seeing that because of with the growth in deployments. And also the sales of the customer premises equipment, which is also about either indoor or outdoor. Often outdoor is what you need to get a good throughput, a good signal. But indoor can also work, and fixed wireless access can also be a good backup. If you've already got fibre. So many people are also having a mobile as a solution to their existing broadband. To give them that surety of service if there's a problem with their broadband supplier.
And, is the sweet spot for FWA business models really sort of the rural village where fibre's less likely to exist and you haven't got this density of lots of buildings and apartments? Or are there other deployment scenarios? And do deployment scenarios change when you look at country to country?
I mean, you can easily see that in developing countries where there's very limited, broadband and cable, there's a big opportunity there, especially in the short to medium term. And so we've seen a lot of growth in those areas. And if you look at the reports that GSA is producing on fixed wireless access deployment, you'll see that those deployments are not just in developing countries, but also growing in those developing areas as well. Obviously, if you're in a built-up area where you've got, lots of potential, then, fibre is always going to be, the primary delivery of broadband. But fixed wireless access does have a role to play, as I said, even as a backup option, but also, as you get more and more into the suburbia and rural, you sometimes you need that additional capacity, and to be able to get that coverage out there, even after 35, 40 years of mobile, it still doesn't reach everywhere. So targeted deployments with fixed wireless access can bridge that gap.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to hear that 5G FWA continues to get a lot of support from operators and vendors. Now, as part of our 5G Evolution Summit, we're also taking a look today at the forthcoming 5G advanced specifications and the start of the 6G era. What work is the GSA doing to support the industry in its evolution through the next set of standards?
Well, as I mentioned, we do have an extensive spectrum group. We work quite closely as well with the GSMA, so we've got the operator and the supplier part of the industry coming together in many areas to promote spectrum and the release of spectrum for mobile. And a lot of the things that are happening today around spectrum activity is because of the WRC conferences, the ITU World Radio Telecommunications Conference that's happening in 2023, where we need to get an agenda item recognised and agreed for 6G and 6G spectrum, for instance. So that is something that has to start now. And those agenda items will then be agreed and discussed, where decisions will be made in WRC 27 for new spectrum, whether it's in the terahertz bands or whether it's in new gigahertz bands or even lower megahertz bands. So that's going to be an important area. As well as we have a standards group and a 6G development group where they are, consolidated and working together to provide development support and advice into the 3GPP technology roadmap that should give us a good idea of what requirements are needed to make 6G as successful as 4G and 5G, for instance.
Well, thanks, Joe. We must leave it there for now, though. Thanks very much for taking part in our summit and sharing your insights on 5G FWA and also for providing us with an update on the GSA's work activities.
Pleasure. Thank you, Guy.